I call regular session back to order at 7:15, and we'll move on with item number 6. To review and act upon the approval of the district's contract for providing fire suppression and rescue services to the district.
Mr. Brown, after due consideration and review by the board of directors, I move that we would adopt the new contract, as well as upon that adoption, immediately move into a review with those that are present here this evening.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Domney that we adopt the contract as presented to the Board of Commissioners. And then after that we would move into a session with the chiefs that are here to go over the contract with them. I have a second.
I second that.
I have a second by Commissioner Thornton. Is there any other question or discussion? If not, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay, and that motion carries. All right, at this time, Eric's going to give all you chiefs a copy of this contract, and Mr. Peeler, the attorney.
11 copies.
Yeah.
At least one for each department.
Yeah, you may want to introduce Mr. Peeler.
Yeah.
His role.
Or you can,
Chief.
you can, Chief. Yeah.
Anybody representing another DSD? No?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask Chief Greaser to introduce the attorney that drafted this contract. He's an attorney out of Houston, over 20 years of doing contracts for ESDs, which we ran into him at the safety conference this last year and came into conversation with him. So, Chief Greaser.
Yeah, thank you, President Brown. Mr. John Peeler has provided us counsel for the last several months as we've worked through a development process and the development team to create the language that's included in the contract. It's been a lot of work to get to this point, and to make sure that we assured service delivery to our citizens and protected the interests of the ESD on all fronts. And so, Mr. Peeler, I appreciate you being willing to impromptu join us for the balance of this and provide the context in your presentation that you have for our board meetings. Our board members, rather. And so I appreciate your willingness to do that. It's all yours.
So before we start,
I'm happy to be here.
Mr. Peter, hold on. I want to make sure everybody understands that the expectation is not that you read this while you're sitting here in its entirety, or that you would be expected to sign it or execute it upon that completion. The purpose of this review is to ensure that we give you the context in which you should read this as you go forward in the next days looking at this, okay? So we're not saying read it and sign it. It's just give us an opportunity to tell you what it's about.
Context.
Yep. Go ahead, Mr. Peter.
Okay, again, remember, I'm not great at this. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen properly.
We've got it.
Okay, you have the PowerPoint up? Okay. Commissioners and Chief Greaser and staff and chiefs and volunteer fire department members, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I've been working with Chief Greaser and other staff members over the last several months. Please understand, as the board member there said, this is not intended to be jammed down your throats with an expectation you're going to read the whole thing right in this minute and sign it. We understand you're going to need time to review it. This PowerPoint is just a short introduction, and of course there may be questions you have afterwards. Also, I've been told at times I don't always come across with the best tone at times when I'm trying to summarize things. So please let me say this from the onset. This is not in the PowerPoint. Our firm works with a number of districts, and we have never told any district that they should get rid of volunteer fire departments, nor that they should get rid of volunteer firefighters. We routinely acknowledge the great contributions that volunteer fire departments and volunteer firefighters make throughout the state and the country. The last time I looked into the statistics, volunteer firefighting was still the majority of firefighting in the United States, and I don't believe that has changed yet. I know it's a little bit cliche, but something I say to anyone who will listen to me is that a dedicated volunteer firefighter is worth his or her weight in gold. They save the districts a tremendous amount of money when it comes to salary and benefit, and they're out there doing the things that protect the citizens, risking their own life and limb. So understand this contract is not meant to be any kind of an indictment against volunteer fire departments. I'm paid to help risk. And the only way you can mitigate risk is you have to plan for things to go wrong. So when you plan for things to go wrong, you put controls in your contract to help, one, prevent them from going wrong, and two, to have resources if they do. As of right now, I have no reason to believe any of the volunteer fire departments are being mismanaged, but frankly, there's never a way to know who's going to be managing a volunteer fire department next year, the year after that, or the year after that. So again, our firm, we do focus on emergency service district law. We work with districts throughout the state, and if you'll let me do this short presentation, it's only about 15 slides, then I think the board is going to give you an opportunity to submit questions in writing back to the board after you've had a chance to review the contract, and of course we can go through those at the board's schedule. So, everyone, this is the review of the new fire department service agreement for Smith County ESD2. Really, when someone asks why does an ESD need a 20-page contract with the volunteer fire department, especially when they've had a good working relationship for a number of years, the answer is always the same. It comes down to one word, and that word is accountability. Your taxpayers and your citizens expect accountability. Accountability encompasses two primary elements, in my opinion, when it comes to ESDs working with volunteer fire departments or really any other contracted vendor that they deal with. That's financial stewardship, because the district board, in this instance, yours is an elected board. The taxpayers and citizens of your district have said, we want these 5 gentlemen to responsibly spend the money that we pay in taxes. That's the stewardship. The second issue of accountability is professionalism. Now, I was told from very early in my career working with emergency services districts to never denigrate the level of dedication of volunteers and to never try to differentiate professionalism based simply on pay. And that's not what happens in this contract. We are not saying that volunteer firefighters are not professional while paid ones are. That's not what we're talking about here. So give me a chance to go through this. I think you'll understand professionalism. We're just simply talking about raising everyone to a level such that the citizens of ESD2, no matter which part of the district they live in, have an expectation that the people coming out to help them in an emergency situation are serious, dedicated, professional people. Financial stewardship. To put it simply, you need controls to ensure you're not wasting your taxpayers' money. An ESD is not a spigot for VFDs to receive money with no controls or safeguards to prevent waste. No contract or administrative model can guarantee 100% efficiency, but a lack of controls and administration, a lack of contract, almost always leads to waste and problems. How does this contract create financial ability? While this district does not make blanket payments to the volunteer fire departments and then hope that the fire departments spend it wisely, this is not a new policy for ESD2. This contract simply reinforces ESD2's policy and practice of controlling funds on the front end through managing things like purchases, monthly utilities, rather than asking for accountability after the money has been paid out. and this is something I agree with. I was very happy when Chief Greaser walked me through this standard that District ESD2 already has in place. Several of the districts we've worked with over the years have gone to this model. Again, it's not that we're accusing anyone of any kind of wrongdoing like theft, anything intentional like that. It's simply a matter of the district has the paid staff available to help keep track of these things on the front end rather than burdening the volunteer fire departments with it on the back end. So financial accountability, those of you who have the contract there in front of you, I'd suggest go ahead and flip to Article 5. It is all about financial accountability. It talks about funding the department operations, payments by the district, and financial policies. This entire article, again, is about accountability. ESD controls the expenditures of funds, as explained in sections B through I, and it requires the fire departments to adopt financial management policies, as explained in Article 5, subsection A. I know we're going quickly, and again, you're going to need to have some time to read this. I understand that. Article 6 also deals with financial accountability. It talks about facilities, vehicles, apparatus, and equipment. It deals with ownership and paying for the capital assets to protect ESD funds. Obviously, I don't mean to be flippant, but fire stations and fire trucks are incredibly expensive. So there have to be contractual terms in place to deal with how those are going to be handled. There are some other sections dealing with financial accountability. The district imposes standards and approval for VFD purchases in section 2.03K. The district reserves the right to staff its personnel in the stations. That's section 2.03H. The district requires annual financial reports, section 2.03J. Now, please understand when we say financial reports, we're not saying a full-blown audit. Audits are extremely expensive and very time-consuming. We're talking about a level that does not go up to that level of expense. Again, since ESD2 does a tremendously detailed job of controlling the funds on the front end, we just didn't think it made sense to have all that money going out to auditors on the back end. The contract has the district also enforcing legitimate expenditures for fuel. No one has said anyone at the departments is misusing or stealing fuel, but it is one of the most common accusations I have run into from community members when they make complaints about ESDs or fire departments. Luckily, not luckily, that's the wrong way to say it. As I would expect when dealing with the districts and departments that I'm familiar with, none of those accusations about misusing fuel have ever been substantiated, but it's something that people think is out there. They say, well, we think that the departments, misuse the gas credit cards, or they think that stations that have built-in storage tanks and pumps at the station, that people are rolling up and fueling up their personal vehicles. And again, we've never seen that, but we have to deal with it in the contract because fuel, again, as you all know, is incredibly expensive. And the district also in the contract restricts the use of assets for legitimate purposes. Again, this was not something Chief Greaser brought to me saying, hey, we've got this problem, help us control it. It's something I advise every district I work with to put in their contracts. I'm not going to get into where this happened, but there were some departments and districts butting heads on the use of district purchase fire apparatus for not normal community outreach, but more like PR and even commercial uses for things like being used in print ads or parades and such that were not necessarily community-based. So we simply say in here that the extremely expensive assets that the district pays for and entrusts to the fire department have to be used for legitimate purposes. So the second part of accountability after stewardship, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, did someone say something?
No, sir.
No? Okay.
Erroneous noise.
Okay. I apologize. I can't see any of you, so I thought I heard something. The second aspect of accountability that we believe is equally important to the financial accountability is professionalism. The district respects the dedication of the men and women of volunteer fire service. However, the ESD is concerned of perception that some departments seem less concerned than others about reaching and maintaining high standards of professionalism. And this can lead to uneven levels of service throughout the district, while all the citizens and businesses deserve the same high level of service. How does this VFD service agreement foster professionalism? It creates uniform standards across the district for all of the contracting departments, dealing with the qualifications and training of the personnel, dealing with the attendance and participation of the personnel in the department's activities and calls, and it does deal with some issues with how discipline will be handled. Qualifications, training, attendance, and participation. Section 2.03A formalizes certification and training standards as well as record keeping. The contract does call for adequate time to be given for officers and firefighters to reach certifications if they don't all meet them yet. The district can provide up to $2,000 for training to get the firefighters the certifications they need, and there's some specific language in there about the time that the departments have to get up to those standards as well. Again, on the qualifications, the district sets a new standard for what we're going to call an active firefighter. That's on section 2.03C. And the district also sets minimum training levels in section 6.04B. So these standards relate to the department maintaining its contract with the district. We do put in there that you have to have a certain minimum number of the active firefighters in order for the contract to remain active. Now, again, this is a place where the district understands you have to have time to come up to these standards. So there is language in there allowing any department that does not meet certain minimums to have time to come up to those minimums. But then once they're met, there are certain requirements that you can't dip below. Also related to the active status of the personnel, the standards relate to the provision of equipment to the firefighters, which in turn prevents waste of district funds. These standards are related to the payment of volunteer incentive, monthly stipends, and paper call stipends as well. The standards relate to expenditures for reimbursing attendance at conferences, again, saving the district money. We think that the standards read pretty self-explanatory, but again, if you have questions, there will be an opportunity for you to put those to Chief Greaser and to the board and myself, so we can get back to you in a timely manner. Discipline. Again, this is not something that Chief Greaser and his staff necessarily brought to me. Some of this is stuff that, as I said, we're advising districts based upon what we've seen over my 20 years of doing this, and we put in some district policies or behavior and discipline that are applied to the volunteer fire departments through this contract. The district may handle investigations of improper behavior rather than relying on the volunteer fire department. Again, again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory in the contract. It's not intended that the district is going to come in and start running your department. That's not the intention here. It is simply a tool in the district's toolbox that if there is an accusation that a department or departments are not handling discipline and behavior issues, which can affect the safety of firefighters and the public, then the district has certain options to come in and handle the investigation so that everyone is held to the same standards. Again, so we're putting certain standards in there which encompass discipline and safety, background checks, drug screens, vehicle records, standards against responding to calls and personally owned vehicles. We want uniformity where the calls are being answered from the station. And we also specify in there that non-department personnel are restricted from participating in responses. So as I said, it's pretty simple, short PowerPoint. It was just intended as an introduction. And so I kick it back to board and Chief Greaser now on how, gentlemen, you want to proceed. with the review. Again, I think this is something that the departments are going to need to be able to take back with them, obviously, and give back to us later with questions. But I'm here at your discretion as much time as you need.
I'll go ahead and speak up and just say that I know that each one of you, have a copy of it, and you've had a brief moment to look at it. We understand that, and it's not for you to, as stated before, not to look at it, but we would highly encourage y'all to look at it collectively and try to present questions back to us if you have some, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. But rather than you looking at it one thing, another one looking the other way, it is, I think, to the benefit of both the VFD chiefs as a whole and to us to have the questions submitted back to us collectively and let us respond back to you collectively. That way everybody gets sees the same questions, everybody sees the same answers. Anybody have any questions over what you've looked at or what you've heard so far?
How long do we have to look it over?
No deadline on it. At this point in time, there's no deadline on it. Of course, we'd like for you to get it back to us as soon as you can. But at this point in time, there is no deadline. But I'll go ahead and put that in though that it's not 3 months. Okay?
When it comes to the disciplinary actions, I understand where you're coming from on it, but how does that play into issues with co-employment law and FLSA? I don't know if you could hear me or not. Does that one feed into it? So a question on the disciplinary section on there, I understand where we're trying to go with it, but how does that play into co-employment law and also FLSA, where if the ESD is coming in and doing an investigation and is issuing disciplinary action on a contractor, that could be construed as we're now employees of the ESD. How does that affect co-employment?
Well, my response to that would be the district would not be assuming the role of the employer simply by saying that you're going to hold the contractor and its employees to certain standards. Again, the baseline is that the contractor is going to enforce behavioral and discipline issues on their own employees. And in some arm's length contracts, the answer would be, well, if the contractor is just flat not willing to do that, you cancel the contract. We discussed this, and that would be a more extreme answer. So instead, the contractor agrees that the district has the ability to come in and conduct the investigation and then make certain recommendations to the department.
Right, and I
mean,
understand.
at the end of the day, the department is the employer, and if the department's not going to cooperate, then the district, arguably would have no alternative but to terminate the contract. We would hope that that's not what's going to happen.
My concern really isn't from the VFD side or the department side. My concern is from an individual person who has received disciplinary action at the request of the ESD. I've run into this with other contracting agencies or contracts that I've signed with other companies providing services, where if the the person we're contracting with is dictating to us how we are dealing with our personnel, then that personnel, even though the department may not do anything, the person as an individual may file suit against the department and the district, or in my case, the two companies that the person works, or the company they work for and the company they're contracted to provide services to, claiming that there's a co-employment concern there. And so I'm just curious how that kind of plays in. It's not the department that would be doing it, but the individual person who's received that disciplinary action.
Well, there's no way for me to say this. It doesn't sound flippant, and I apologize. I don't advise individual volunteer fire department members. So whether they think they have certain rights beyond what I'm saying the contract does, I mean, that would be up to them and their own counsel. Again, the intention was that the district would have the ability, if there was a problem, to come in and help remedy the problem so that we did not have to terminate the contract.
Right, yeah. And I understand from that perspective. I was just curious if you had encountered that at all. Okay, that's it.
I've got a question. And this is just part of something that I've noticed. It states here the department agrees to carry liability insurance. Okay? Before, all the insurance was carried by the ESD. Are y'all expecting us to go through?
I think if you'll read on over in the contract package, it states all that. It just
Well,
states.
it gets into the weeds down in it, and that's,
What section are you reading out of, Matt?
but I'm looking at,
What page?
4 point something.
What page are you on?
I'm on 11, and it says, department agrees to carry liability insurance for respective facilities and all this other stuff that we're required to carry. That's gonna be fully reimbursable by the district, correct?
Yeah, if I may jump in there, I think the intent was if there was a facility that was no longer online for the district, that it would be fall back to the VFD service provider contract to have liability insurance for that facility. So I think one example of that is the Flint Gresham station that was decommissioned. So the district no longer provides that, but the contract says that if that's still going to be in possession of that service provider contractor, that it would have to be liability insurance. So it's not a normal circumstance. It's really an exception.
Chief Greaser, may I speak?
Please.
And I don't want to steal any thunder from Mr. Peeler, but Chief Arnold, I think if you'll look at section 5I, I'll just read one line. Any reference in this agreement to the department's obligation to provide insurance is satisfied through the district's centralized procurement. So yeah, it's very explicitly recognized that while there's an obligation that the district pays for it and they handle it centrally. I know it's a lot to read.
Yeah, thank you. I was flipping through it to try to get to that section. You got there faster than me.
Chief Greaser, I'll ask you to just go ahead and address, look at page 8, item number 4. We've had that discussion on a couple of different occasions ourselves, and so in lieu of going recognized here, I would ask you to go ahead and just talk about that.
Yeah, so there's been some conversations amongst, as we've developed it, number 4, page 8 at the top. The district employed officers are authorized to take command of any emergency scene at the discretion of the district officer on scene. The department agrees that the department personnel are subject to on-scene command by district officers. That is, the intention is not to automatically take command. The intention is to have the authority to take command for commissioned firefighters as necessary. I train my chief officers specifically and embrace the concept of reinforcing a command post that's already operating through priority checklist and running through a scene assessment. So it's more of a team command concept and an opportunity to teach one that is already in command rather than take command automatically as a function. So I don't think that that's a whole lot different than what's already in practice that's being accomplished day in and day out. but it is formalized in the contract verbiage.
You guys also need to look at too, it's also in the contract, if you're having problems with somebody at your station, there is a formal way to present it now. If there's an issue with somebody at the station, whether it's, paid staff or whatever, there is a resolution process to that. The only difference between this one is it will be a written document to the chief with specifics about what the problem is.
One other thing that I've spoke with Chief Dale Peterson on a number of occasions related to personal vehicles going directly to the scene. So the contract does prevent personal vehicles from volunteer members going directly to the scene without written approval of a need. Specifically, Chief Peterson articulated a certain circumstance that makes great sense related to EMS runs and particular call types where a volunteer member may pass a home that may be in need of difficulty breathing, CPR, things of that nature. But it is a written authorization type condition, not a blanket carte blanche. It would only be for specific situations. It specifically prevents, and its goal was to prevent personal vehicles from showing up in intersections to the interstate, to our places at great risk for our volunteers. And so I certainly wouldn't dance around that. It certainly prevents that, and I want to make that point extremely clear.
In reference to that, out in the rural area, if we have a problem when we're responding, you don't want us to drive past an accident to render aid. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, there could be circumstances like that where, even as a layperson, you wouldn't want to drive by an accident and not render aid. But the intent is to not go to the scene, to go to the station. Yep. I don't think it's a large divergence from what most are doing, but I do understand from some of the incident commanders on the interstate that there's certain circumstances where we've got people at great risk on the highways. Yeah, so unfortunately, we would like to go with the stipend policy. We didn't want to water this piece down, and since we had our representation, Mr. Peeler, on the video conference, we wanted to maintain that. So if you'll just allow us to get to that piece, allow the board to take action on it if they so choose, and then I'd be happy to answer questions related to that.
Okay.
And while you're talking about that section, you'll notice, I'll just point out, number 1, the minimum responses is required is 20%, but it's 20% of the lowest call volume department. So it doesn't mean that Chapel Hill has to run the person has to run 20% of 1,000 calls or whatever a month. He's got to run 20% of whatever the lowest call volume in the district is. So if it's Troop and they've got 10 calls, 20% of them is what you got to run for the month. So,
But it says in there that it's calculated on a quarterly basis.
mhm.
So are we looking at active status on a quarterly basis, or are we looking at it per month?
Yep, quarterly.
Quarterly, okay.
So they make more one month and make up for months that's shorter.
Yeah, you could, yeah, you basically could do that. I mean, say, I use the example of the guy that works offshore, 2 weeks out, 2 weeks in. He may not make them all when he's in that 2 weeks, but the next time he's in, he may get to run more calls and make up what he was deficit on, you know? So there's always gonna be a little leeway, I would think. We're not trying to make this thing so hard nobody can do it, you know?
I wasn't sure, so at the calculation on a quarterly basis,
Yeah,
if it's 2 calls, whether you're applying it by month or you're applying it by quarter, so that's just where
yeah,
question.
yeah. And I think the number of active firemen you have to have is pretty reasonable too.
And it's 3 months to get that if you're not at that? I mean, my department is, there's 3 months in the contract, I think is what it says, to get down to the minimum number.
What about our people that are in school taking courses? Course is more than 3 months.
I would think as long as they're in school trying to obtain it, I don't think we could actually just hold that against them, but, you know, but,
Right now, trying our junior program, we've got people going over to Overton taking the course. I've got 2 volunteers over there now. They're in school, going to school. Join the Kilgore College.
And I guess I want to point out and make sure that y'all pay attention as you're reading through the contract. There are certain areas in the contract that say shall, and there are very few of those.
very few.
Most of them say may, which leaves it up to a level of discretion. I say, if you come to us and say, I've got these guys, then we may, doesn't mean we have to. So, like I say, we don't, the intent is not to tie you guys' hands tight that you can't do anything.
Can't operate.
No, not at all.
So the minimum number of active firefighters in this contract is a shall, by the way. Yeah, because the Smith County Academy, even what we do internally, is more than 3 months. Again, my department doesn't have any issues, but just thinking long-term, future possibilities. You know, as Mr. Keeler said, we have to plan for future things, for things to go bad. So, I mean, if we have people that are going through the Smith County Academy trying to get their fire certification to become certified active firefighters, the internal academy is 5 months long or 4 months long, then we're going to be out of compliance with the contract.
Correct. You would be out of compliance with the contract, but you would be able to articulate how you're going to become in compliance with the contract. Without a plan, hope is not a plan, so you would have a plan there to articulate how and when you would be in compliance with the contract. But without that, without a plan, you know, you would definitely not be in compliance, and that's where it'd be.
Well, even with plain layout or what if, on somebody that falls out of compliance 1 3-month period, if there's a good reason for it, health issues or something, and they may have something going on in the family that does happen. Surely we can articulate that and maybe give them a little leeway.
Yeah, just because you would be served a notice that you're out of compliance or breach, doesn't mean that the board would decide to take action. You'd have to come before the board and articulate your points, and ask for, it wouldn't negate the fact that you would be in breach of contract, but it would be your ability to stand right here like you have tonight and tell the board what your plan is.
I'll ask if anybody else has any questions, and I know that you've been given a short amount of time to look at it. Well, hopefully we're giving you a good introduction, but there's no expectation that you're gonna be able to go through it all at this point in time, so.
I've got one right quick, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
It's over hit on 10, dealing with no district-owned vehicle or apparatus may be used at any time for commercial, personal, or profit purposes. Okay? My question in dealing with that, I've had, over the years, we've had several occasions in White House where we did neighborhood parade, they give a donation to the volunteer fire department. That's a profit.
No, those are donations.
It's donation.
Okay.
Donation.
Yeah, that's a donation paid for you.
I mean, that's,
What that would be, Gene, would be like somebody called you and said, hey, bring me 500 gallons out here and throw in my swimming pool and I'll give you $50.
right.
That's, that,
And you put that put money in your pocket and profited from it.
yeah, right.
Okay, all right.
No problems with that.
Anybody else have any questions or anything? By all means, we welcome to
Yep.
whatever y'all may want to put together and send back to us.
We'll try to answer all of them that we can.
Yep.
But if you got questions, write them out and we'll get answers to them.
If nothing more, would you be okay if we sign off with Mr. Peeler?
Yeah, that'll be fine with me if nobody has any more questions.
All right, Mr. Peeler, we appreciate your willingness to go longer with us tonight, and we'll be in touch. We appreciate your help.
Thank you, Mr. Peter.
Thank you.
Chief Greaser, Commissioners, when you get the questions back from the volunteer fire departments, just Chief Greaser and I will get back together on them and we'll put some answers together.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everyone else has left the call.
Okay. I think I'll put our attorney on the spot. I know you've had a short time to look at it. What do you think about it, Mr. Hardy?
Thank you, President Brown. I'll chime in. I've done too much of that tonight already, but this is fairly new to me, and you're probably picking up that the expert that was on Zoom did most of the legwork on this, but I'll tell you as chiefs the same thing that I've told the commissioners, that on review of this, and I spend my life going blind looking at contracts, this is one of the better ones I've ever seen. I can tell a lot of work went into this by the ESD administration, by the attorney, and I'll throw Chief Greaser a softball. I mean, from what I see, I really think a great deal of this serves mostly to memorialize the way things are already being done. I think as you read this, you're not going to find a tremendous amount of new or a tremendous amount of change. At least that's my perception of it. I think it's well put together. I know you need time to digest it. Nobody lawyer or otherwise, can expect you to sit here and read 20 pages in 30 minutes and understand it. I can't do that, and I do this all day. Take it home, read it. I'll now throw Chief Greaser under the bus and say, when you've got a question, just type it up in an email or give him a call and let him know what your concerns are, what your questions are. Give us, Chief, Attorney Peeler, me, give us some time, and we'll provide you an answer. There's no intent here to surprise or blindside anyone or hold a gun to your head over any of this. We want you to have time to digest it, look at it, and understand it, and ask us if there's something that's not clear to you. I thought the example that Chief Arnold brought up about the insurance was great, because it does appear in here 2 or 3 times, and if you haven't read the whole thing, you're going to have that question. I had that question. You get down a page or two and you say, okay, it's taken care of. So spend some time with it and let us know where you're not comfortable, and we'll do our best to address that.
Anybody else? All right, let's move on to item number 7. Discuss, consider, and take action on proposed Smith County ESD2 policies as listed below. 7.1, discuss, consider, and take action on the proposed amended volunteer stipend policy. Who is going to speak on that one? Eric or Chief or?
We were seeing if we could get that pulled up.
Hold the commission.
All right, so the premise behind it is most importantly to improve some of the pay per call related to those with greater certifications. It removes pay per call for those with no certifications. And it also has an adjustment for the total caps. And there were some comments amongst the VFD chiefs from meetings related to all of this. I think that the one thing, though, that I felt like it did not make sense was to pay a stipend for a member that has no certification to mitigate a call that may place them at great risk because they're unknowing about the risk and the situations that they may find themselves in. So there's no reason that we would want to encourage that. We want to encourage the certification side of the equation, so it rewards certifications by increasing by $5 for the associated certifications. It also adds in a support level has been added to the stipend. That is also embedded in the contract. The SFFMA certification for support. And we wanted to encourage that certification and also add that to the stipend pay per call policy.
So you guys will know what the amounts are. Support is $10 per call. Med certification only is $15. Firefighter 1 only is $20. Firefighter 1 and medical certification is $25. Firefighter 2 only is $30 a call. And Firefighter 2 and medical certification is $35 a call. And with everything, we raised the caps. The stipend for a firefighter, his cap is $10,047 now. A lieutenant is $12,939. Captain is $14,585. Training coordinator is $14,585. Assistant chief, $16,038, and the chief is $21,680. So that's your new cap. Yep.
I do have a question to assist us in getting these people up to level. We're going to need support from training.
Yep.
To get these people the training that is being required.
Right.
And our training officers will be in touch with y'all.
No doubt.
And we're gonna have to get a plan together to get these people up to stuff. We've been trying on our own, but this is putting it on that.
Chief, I have one question. On the low one where it's like the SFMA. Support? Yes, sir. Can that also be if they get all their, wildland?
Or actually, that would make the argument that if they were wildly certified, should they be classified as firefighter one?
It does say that.
Oh, it does say
Right,
that.
it does.
I can't see the policy, so does it say
Yeah.
that? So firefighter one is either SFFMA firefighter one or a wildland certification, either TCFE or.
So the companion document to this is the equipment provisioning policy that then says exactly what you're getting to, which is, if wildland certified only, then they would get wildland equipment only. If firefighter one, entry, they would also get bunker gear, PPE. So it provisions out appropriately based on certification. And, you know, the premise behind that is really return on investment, making sure that we're giving gear to the right people that need it, for the right call types that they would be responding on. So there is a need for those with wildland certifications that may not be entry, and we want to make sure that they're fully protected in that environment. Additionally, the support personnel to make sure that they're protected in their roles and responsibilities. So they all are companion to each other and coexist as they should.
I think the way that it's been currently before, assuming this gets adopted, is that if you're wildland only, you get $5 because you're not firefighter one.
Right.
So that's where my concern was.
Okay.
I have a question, what about G-Star, certification for G-Star, where's that gonna be at?
Yeah, GSAR is really a support function, so I think it falls under support. Yep.
And, sorry, so there is still a medical only stipend rate on there?
For
That-
medical only?
That's correct, at $15.
Yeah.
I have a question on that. To go back to your bunker gear policy.
Let me clear one up and hold that. Back to Chief Peterson. The one thing about GSAR is it would be a companion to the support, the SFFMA support. So you would need both. You'd have GSAR and support. Yeah, that's how those would coexist. Chief Stone, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. On the medical only, will they be able to be on the bunker gear side, at least given tech gear? Because if not, they can't come and sit on the car wreck.
It's not tech gen, but there is provisions in there. So let us get to that.
Well, I mean, you knew what I was.
Yes,
talking about.
I do.
And on the support, I got this question. Support is gonna be held to the same 20% as the other certifications, correct?
As a member of your department,
Yep.
the activity levels are synonymous across the board.
All right. Have any other question or discussion on the stipend policy? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve it. So made. Have a motion by Commissioner Dominy that we approve the new Smith County ESD2 stipend policy. I have a second. Have a second by Commissioner Edwards. Is there any other question or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay, and that motion carries.
Sorry, one thing that I forgot to go back to. What is the 24 hours of service time? We were gonna talk about that. I forgot to ask.
24.
Defining the 24 hour, what is defined as service time for the 24 hours?
Once we approve these, I'll give everybody a copy of every policy.
Okay. Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. Okay. Next one is the individual equipment provisioning policy draft. This new policy applies to both paid staff and volunteers and brings greater clarity as to who receives what equipment and PPE. Further, the policy is referred to in the new service provider contract. So, you gonna speak on that one, Chief?
Yeah, I think we've kind of already touched on it just a little bit. It is certainly a companion document to the new service provider contract. It specifically allocates the resources of the district to the individuals that need specific personal protective equipment and gear to accomplish the mission that they fit into. It specifically allocates for the different certification levels to make sure that the PPE is in place. It first, in a graphical format, calls out for support personnel. It then calls out for medical-only certified personnel and what they would be provided. Drivers, wildland firefighters, and structural firefighters. And so it says what pieces and parts each of those members would be issued by the district to make sure that they can carry out their roles and responsibilities of the mission. And we'll release that publicly, email and otherwise.
All right. I'll entertain a motion on this policy.
I'll make the motion that we adopt or the board approves the new individual equipment PPE provision policy.
Yeah, have a motion by Commissioner Domney.
Connection was closed, but your phone is still connected.
Can I turn it on? Thank you.
Okay. All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Domney that the board approve the policy on the individual equipment issued. So, have a second? Have a second by Commissioner Thornton. Any other question or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. All right. 7.3, boot policy for the district.
If I may, President, the boot policy seeks to make sure that the dollars that we're spending of our resources towards protective footwear are in a compliant format, that what we spend from our dollars is to purchase the right compliant footwear for the need, to make sure that we're protecting our members. Prior to that, there was a dollar amount set where you could procure a boot of your choice. It had no relationship to actual being compliant related to the industry standards. So this says that we'll replace boots every 2 years, making sure that they're compliant and as needed, not just automatically every 2 years, but as needed. As a need is demonstrated in the timeline, the district would replace their boot, assure that we're providing that level of protection to all of our members, and that if a member then chooses to have a more comfy pair of boots, that would be something that they would provide on their own. But the boots that we would provide, for example, would be wildland certified, potentially the EMS certification, dual or even triple certified NFPA standard boots.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions about that? And this policy is just like the preceding policy, covers both. Correct. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
There is a caveat that they've provided to us, and it's about initial outlay of funds. And so, though I don't disagree with the intent of the policy, I do, I'm very interested in what we think the initial outlay is going to be on that. So, and I know that you've committed to provide this in the next meeting. Is that correct? That is correct.
Commissioners, that pretty much relates to buying an initial sizing set with standard sizes that we know we're gonna run through. That's the main cost of this. The other change is that these would be provided every 2 years instead of every 1 year. So we feel like after the initial investment, it should be pretty cost neutral.
Any other question or comment?
I move that we, board approves the new issuance and replacement of the duty boot policy.
Okay, have a motion by Commissioner Domney that we approve the duty boot issuance policy. Have a second? Have a second by Commissioner Wilson. Is there any other question or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay, and that motion carries. All right, that pretty well brings us down to the end. Anyway, any of you commissioners have anything you'd like to say? Brad? Scotty? Charles? Brent?
I'll just reiterate to everybody that, we appreciate you spending the time coming up here tonight to look at the, contract. Please go through and read it and make sure that you understand it the best you can, and what you don't, by all means, send it back to us. We wanna make sure that everybody is fully informed on what that contract says and what it means.
Right.
So, thank you very much for the time you spent with us tonight.
Yep. All right. I don't have anything else to say except thank you guys for the job you do and keep doing it. And we are adjourned at 8:17.